welcome to Be Now. My name is Don McLeod, and this is a Thursday edition of Be Now. We don't normally do a Thursday edition, but you know, when stupidity happens, you got to cover it. Joining me now is Fazal Khan. Faz, how you doing?
I'm good, Don. Yeah, I think I titled it "Bumbling," not stupidity, but I think it's the same thing, right?
Pretty well. It's like when you go to Queenspark and you advocate for something that's out of the jurisdiction of the provincial government and make a fool of yourself. I guess, yeah, that's stupidity, and it's bumbling on the top of it. So let's lay a little groundwork. Faz, go ahead and you lay the groundwork for what happened today at Queenspark.
Well, let's quickly go through. We got a lot of stuff to cover, but
let's go.
We're gonna try to do it fast, right? I know it's gonna sound a little boring, but there's a lot we gotta get through. So the first one is, like, really, what is the job of a councillor? It is a municipal election time, and I see a lot of people running that are making all sorts of claims about stuff they're going to do in council, and they can't do it because it's either out of your jurisdiction or there's a reason why it hasn't been done already. The second one is, Bowman goes to Queenspark, and we'll get into that. The reason he went to Queenspark was because he's upset at what's happening with the BramptonU investigation. So it's probably a good time to give a quick primer on that. And then, Bowman neglects, or he really diminishes the breaking in the Municipal Act that he and a group of other 5 councillors did on May 31st. There was a judge that ruled against them, was probably about 6 weeks ago. And he calls it their attempt to do succession planning. So we'll get into that.
Yeah, please.
And we really got into explain the role of the Integrity Commissioner, the Ombudsman, the courts, the police, because all of these resources, from my perspective, should be used for crimes, not for petty politics that these councillors are using it for. And who pays? I think we all know the answer to that, but we'll get into it. And then I think one of the reasons that Bowman was allowed to go speak today there was because he probably sold them on the idea, I want to talk about the Strong Mayor's Powers Act that I think the Mayor of Toronto and the Mayor of Ottawa is probably going to get in at the beginning of the next council term in November. So Bowman was there talking about that, saying, Mayor Brown should not get it, right? And so he had a lot of questions from the handful of reporters that were there about, like, so who decides who gets it, who doesn't, right? If one of the competitors against Brown gets it, should they get it, wins the election, should they get strong powers? So we'll talk about that. And then there were some secret papers. There's always secret papers. And that is what just rang the alarm bells in me when Bowman flashed papers. We'll get into that. So let's start. Don, what is the job of a councillor?
Well, the job of a councillor basically is to represent his constituents on the ground level, right? And take their concerns, to city council, or advocate, whether it be provincial or federal wise, and delegate to those parties involved on what their constituents want. But at the same time, as a council as a whole, I mean, your job is to basically represent the residents. You're supposed to make sure that the money is well spent. You're supposed to be able to take a look at, trust the CEO and what he is doing, implement those plans going forward, and ensuring that taxpayers' money is spent wisely. That's just a breakdown. I mean, it's obviously more complicated.
But I didn't hear you say anything about launching investigations in that.
No, because that's a CAO's job, and it's a council to direct the CAO if they want to do an investigation. Council, and we know the bloc is basically, throwing all this out the window, and they claim that, as Martin Madero says, they can do anything. They're supreme under the halls of City Hall, and they can get away whether it be good or bad, and they can do anything. Well, apparently, no, that is not the role of the councillor, and they're not there to pick and choose who they can do audits, or who can do the audit. That's the CAO role, and the CAO at this time is an interim CEO called Paul Morrison, who's head of bylaw. I don't think that basically we're looking at someone that will be there in the long term. I don't think.
Well, and especially when the goal is to do a forensic accounting audit. I'm not even sure why they call it forensic, because the allegation was, if you remember, there was a manila envelope that showed up at Pat Fortini's door with invoices that were paid like every other day, right? You don't need a forensic audit. You just need to, where's the invoice? Who authorized it? Was it paid, right? So like the whole premise for starting this was ridiculous to begin with. But as Madeira said, when 6 people on a council of 11 people vote, the majority wins. But when things flip around, a lot of these councillors have a problem with it. Okay, so and from my perspective, the job of a councillor is similar to, if many of you who are watching are on a nonprofit, a board of director, it's to oversee things, right? Not to say, hey, that looks wrong, let's go do an investigation and spend money. You ask questions, hopefully along the way. You don't wait for a project to be done and then say, hey, how much did that cost? And who got it, right? So that's the wrong way for a councillor to act, is wait to something from their perspective look broken and then spend tons of money, and we'll get into that, on an investigation. It's manage it along the way. So Don, I know you had some trouble watching the stream, so we found out about this very last minute. So I didn't have a chance to record the stream. I was watching it on this device here.
I was going to check my thing. Yep.
Yeah, and it wasn't even working properly because the stream was jittery. And I went back later to see if I can get some video for everybody, and so you can't even get video. So, this is a councillor who cannot communicate to his local residents. He has to go to Queenspark, to the media studio, get an NDP MPP to sponsor him there, and the MPP, I forget his name, but he's the municipal critic, to sponsor him there, and then it streams, and the stream isn't recorded anywhere. So, unfortunately, we don't have video of him. That's the only evidence I had that he was at Queenspark. But we got lots to talk about what he actually said. Let me just fix the screen here, Don. So he went to Queenspark basically to rehash everything that's been going on in the city that him and his team of 5 other councillors have instigated, right? All of these investigations, and basically, to sum up, Mayor Brown should not get the
special powers,
the strong mayor powers that John Tory and the mayor of Ottawa are probably going to get in the new term.
Well, let's take a look at what he said. Basically, was Patrick Brown, like he was there for one reason only, but he hijacked it into his own little spiel. He was there, as you said, at the invitation of an NDP MP to talk about the mayoral powers that Doug Ford is going to institute. And obviously the NDP is against it, as the Liberals are against it. And he was there. And I guess this MP said, oh, I got Jeff Bowman. Well, Jeff Bowman was there, and he said Patrick Brown was a poster child of the reason that you don't give mayors strong power. Well, to counter that, I would suggest that the reason that you give mayors strong powers is because of councillors like Jeff Bowman. That's number one. Having a block hijack City Council, Brampton City Council, for the last year is why a mayor needs strong powers, because you have little tiny potentates that are afraid to run for mayor. They don't run the mayor, but they want the entire power of the mayor and give themselves titles like Pat Fortini and Martin Medeiros did of, deputy dog mayors, right? And it's like, if you want to be mayor, you run for mayor. Put your name in the ballot. Beyond that, Jeff Bowman then went off into a tangent and started to talk about investigations, judges' rulings, and so on and so forth. So basically, he was there rambling on about nonsensical stuff, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that stood out to me, and we'll talk about it. But everything revolves around the BramptonU project, which, if you remember 4 years ago, we were looking forward to an $80 million investment into a Ryerson facility to kind of establish another university presence in the city. Doug Ford canceled this maybe the second day that the council were on the job. And then so the BramptonU initiative started, because it's like council saying, you can cancel it, but we're going forward. We're going to figure out a way to do this. It's probably not aligned with what you want to do, but we got to continue to think for the future. So that project started. And there's a lot of, what the controversy is, and I'll mention the names, right? Because these other councillors keep saying, and a councillor, right? Because we all know which councillor they're talking about, but they don't want to go on record saying it. So Councillor Santos, who is one of the most educated person on council, was a driver of the BramptonU initiative, and she knows lots of people. And one of her professors was one of the people that got one of the contracts to do whatever consulting work was necessary for this. And I think somebody that Mayor Brown knew as well. You and I, Don, we have experience with conflict of interest. And conflict of interest happens when you are married to somebody, when you're a relative to somebody, when you're given preferential treatment to somebody. When we were awarded funding for the Neighborhood Watch program, it's a conflict of interest. Why is it a conflict of interest? Because Councillor Santos knows you. That is not a conflict of interest. Most politicians who've been around know everybody. They have pictures of everybody. And to top it off, Councillor Santos went to the current Integrity Commissioner at the time and said, "Am I in conflict at all?" The Integrity Commissioner said no. And so that is what allowed Councillor Santos to continue voting on things related to BramptonU. And when you see the recent report that came out from this forensic investigation, which people say, "Oh, the mayor blocked it." The thing is out. You can go get it and read it. It's the interim draft report. Sorry, it's the draft final report. Some people are referring to it as an interim report. No, it's the draft of a final report, which is basically almost a done report. And it incorrectly says that Councillor Santos was in conflict. She was not in conflict. The rules they were using is for employees. Employees can't get their friends to come bid on projects if they're the ones making the decision. Councillor Santos is not an employee, and she's not on making the decision, and so she's not in conflict.
She also actually asked for the legal advice as well. The now fired, city solicitor, she asked him if that was in conflict, and he said no. He was fired by the group of 5 or 6 as well.
Yeah. Okay, we got a lot of stuff to go through, Karen, and that was a long one. So in a nutshell, to me, BramptonU was successful because it has driven a lot. And, on Tuesday's show, we talked about the growth of Algoma U, and people will say, well, that's not BramptonU. Come on. If you don't know that when a council makes a decision to go in a certain direction, that doesn't stir everybody in the community to raise their profile and start advocating. Algoma U actually said they want to be the primary tenant in the Center for Innovation that the city is planning. And University of Guelph-Humber have also said that. So now we have competition. We've got 3,000 students at Algoma in the downtown. We've got a medical school company. We've got the Cyber Academy. We've got Sheridan doing really well. And then we've got the interest in University of Guelph-Humber. So if somebody says the advocacy for post-secondary education was a failure, like, you're out to lunch.
Well, what do we have next, Faz? Because basically we have limited time here. We want to sort of concentrate on what basically was said at the press conference at Queenspark by Councillor Jeff Bowman, who is no longer running, by the way.
Yeah, so, I actually forgot to put some stuff up as I was rambling, but so we did get in contact. So no, Councillor Fortini contacted us today by a reply on a tweet, basically saying we should make the final investigation report public and let the residents decide. Here's the issue with that. That whole investigation was politically driven, right? And so I'll show you a video. This is the video of Councillor Medeiros, who passed the motion to this investigation. And you just listen to this and then we'll talk about it.
The previous investigation, yes, we left it to stop. And yes, what did we find? We had councillors running to high heaven talking about that everyone was exonerated. Everything was great. Nothing to see here. And here we are again with another investigation. And that's why I moved it, to ensure that we had direct to council, that the auditor report direct to council. Now the wording, trying to split words, what's the spirit, what's the meeting? The 3 councillors as the steering committee can meet with the auditor. I moved it. We can reopen it, vote on it again, add the amendment. But the scope regarding all the other work will come to council for final approval. So that's the important essence of this. And that is the spirit. But the idea to start questioning who was in that room, who was not in the room, we're in this mess because exactly councillors did that. Members of this council directed, in conjunction with the CEO or previous CEO and previous staff, there were invoices signed. There was money spent. And that's why we're in this mess. So to sit here and talk about transparency, well, this is not a transparent process. Council's going to have the right to vote on everything. So that has nothing to do with transparency. So what you're doing is questioning the integrity of 3 colleagues. And that is wrong. 3 colleagues are there to ensure that council's will. There were 6 votes. Now, the fact that councillors are whining, going on, that they wish there was 2 more, tough. That's the way democracy works. There were 6 votes. There was direction given. The 3 are fulfilling their duty. I don't question their integrity.
But now that they don't have the majority, now all of a sudden, no, they're hiding. It's a cover up. It's the mayor is doing something that he shouldn't do. The mayor doesn't make decisions. He has one vote on council. It was a majority decision to not pay the $50,000 that the forensic auditor wanted to issue the final report. An additional $50,000. Right. And remember that council meeting was May 31st. This investigation was supposed to last 30 days. Right. I don't remember it costing over 100,000. Right. I think it's 150,000 plus an additional 50 to get the final report. And that's on top of a $500,000 investigation that also found nothing that these councillors had their hand in.
Yeah, I mean, how many investigations have been lost and how much money has been spent, taxpayers' money on a regular basis, right? So, you can throw allegations out there, but at some point in time, you're going to have to answer for those allegations if they're totally false and misleading. I know Patrick Brown put, and actually Jeff Bowman was funny, seconded the motion a couple of weeks ago saying that there would be consequences if councillors or anyone on council said anything misleading to the newspaper or out there in the public on a regular basis. This is a prime example that possibly, some sort of investigation, coming forward, or how that is going forward on councillors and what kind of sanctions will be assessed to the councillors. This is a prime example. You go to Queenspark and you start spouting stuff that is totally false on a regular basis. Have some of those falsehoods showing up now fast. Well,
and this Councillor Bowman is not running again, so he's not going to have to suffer.
No, he's not going to have to deal with it. But let's throw up a couple of things that he said and what the judge said in regards to that investigation.
So let me just kind of sum it up though here, right? So some of the reporters were asking questions about when he broke the Municipal Act, and that's why it was a comedy show, right? Because if you go to a press release, a seasoned person sticks to their message. You don't start answering questions that are unrelated, right? But Bowman any more questions, and he's just taking any questions that he wanted, right? Because, he does not engage with the media in the city of Brampton and does not know how to do it, as most councillors. And so, questions started coming about him breaking the Municipal Act. And he said, he didn't say we didn't break the Municipal Act. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he called it was their attempt at succession planning, and the courts had an alternate opinion. Yeah. And it's like, okay, so, I prepared a couple of slides to show exactly what the judge says. So Medeiros also said that, one of the things that, let me go back to this now. One of the things that is not being covered is the judge said that they were not doing anything malicious or nefarious related to this, right? Here's what the judge said about that. The judge says, I hasten to add that neither party is alleging any bad faith by anyone in this matter, and I am making no findings of any deliberate misconduct. That is not saying you didn't do this, any misconduct. It is saying that the plaintiff here, who is Councillor Singh, who wanted basically for everybody to go back to council without Elaine Moore being there, just tell us if what they did is right or wrong, not if they had malicious intent. Malicious intent, yeah. But Bowman comes back and says, nobody's covering that we didn't have malicious intent, and that nobody ruled on that. So exactly. And that's the whole point. If you're gonna say something and you're gonna sway your way, going back to that statement that he made, it was a matter of succession planning. Oh, really? When does council, when are they royalty now? Is there succession planning? That was against the Municipal Act. It was clearly against the Municipal Act. The city solicitor said it was against the Municipal Act, and they ignored him and eventually fired him. Patrick Brown told them, guys, this is not right. And this is the leader of the Conservative Party on the provincial level. He ought to know what the Municipal Act is. They ignored him. They ignored the CAO's comments in regards to that. And then they also spent money on getting their own external legal opinion. Exactly, and the taxpayers they spent our money, not their own. Exactly, money. They paid. Our tax dollars went for their other opinion that the Municipal Act is only there as a guideline. No, it's not. It's like
we mentioned before, the speed limit. Yeah, it's only there as a guideline. No, it's actually there in the books.
And
right?
so I'll
So-
read the statement that the judge made regarding their activities here. So it says, so the judge says, I'm satisfied that the resolution passed at the special meeting on May 31st, which is the one we saw with Medeiros,
Right.
conflicted with the purpose of the mechanism under the Municipal Act for filling a council vacancy by having the departing incumbent participate in the process for appointing her successor. Is there any ambiguity in that, saying that, oh, it's a rookie mistake?
No, it's
No.
crystal clear, basically.
If you get convicted of murder, Don, are you a murderer?
Well, I guess that's the judge's opinion, right?
Yeah.
You know,
It's the judge's opinion if we're a murderer.
Exactly.
That's the bar we're going with
exactly.
here. The judge is now the opinionator.
Right. And the secession idea is just, it's a ludicrous attempt to say that, yes, we can pick successors. No, that is up to the public, basically. Under the Municipal Act, council can actually put someone in there. They have to vote on it at the same time, but they have to wait till that person actually leaves the seat and they cannot vote on it, right?
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous scenario that they try and spin and say, oh, well, we didn't do this, we didn't do this. It was actually okay to do this, and it wasn't okay to, it's, guys, Queenspark, the reporters there, they don't cover Brampton. We know what's going on in Brampton. It's attempt, it's a ridiculous scenario that Bowman is trying to do. And
yeah, he's clearly campaigning against the mayor, right?
Yeah, well, Pat Fortini, right? Jeff Bowman, Doug Willens is no longer running. He was part of that. Gurpreet Dillon, he's part of that cabal as well. And these guys at some point in time, as I said before, the ridiculous scenario that they put out that the mayor is doing this and this and this, it's like, guys, you know what? At some point in time, you're going to have the answer for that.
Yeah. So let's move on here now. So the integrity commissioner, as we know, I think there's a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against.
So multi-million-dollar. The last integrity commissioner, they fired the cabal of six. Fired her, right? Which is basically, to me, outside their role. Again,
that's basically what she's saying too, right?
Yeah,
she's there for a contract, and they just fired her without cause.
Yeah, and that's why she's got a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the city, which is eventually against the taxpayers. Right? The ombudsman role, they wanted an independent ombudsman. I think Jeff Bowman actually voted against that, having an independent ombudsman. Right? So, courts and police, they're trying to drag the courts into it, the police into it.
Remember when Gurpreet Dillon, I forget what happened, and he called a press conference saying, we're asking the Ontario Provincial Police to look at this.
Yeah.
And you can ask them to do whatever you want to do. That doesn't mean there's any admission of guilt or wrongdoing, or that they'll even take the case, right? But it's a stunt to get the news to cover it, saying, "Oh, the OPP is potentially looking into investigating," right?
Yeah, and the
it
OPP
just drags
came back,
the story on and on.
Yeah, and the OPP came back and said, "Guys, this does not warrant an investigation. Yeah. Go away."
Any allegation of corruption from a councillor has to go through the integrity commissioner. It can't be three councillors colluding together to hire a forensic investigator to write a report. And as Councillor Fortini says, because he was on the steering committee, let's just issue the report and let voters decide. We already seen there's inaccuracies in that report, right? And when they said that Councillor Santos was in conflict, right? She wasn't in conflict.
No, and that was ruled against by the as we said before, the integrity commissioner and the city solicitor at the time. Yeah. And they could back that up if they hadn't been fired by the cabal of six.
Yeah. Who pays Don? It's a lot of money. Let me just.
Let me take a look and see what's in my pocket right now. Absolutely nothing, because
you still owe it. You still owe it. You better write a note. I owe it. So when Councillor Singh filed a petition with the courts to look at this ruling about getting Elaine Moore in there, guess who had to defend that case? The city of Brampton, because it was a majority of council that passed it. So we had to get paid lawyers to go there and fight against something that was clearly wrong that another councillor wanted, right? Who paid for that? It was us again.
Yeah, and the thing is, I know that Martin Medeiros was advocating. Apparently, Pat Fortini had some legal bills. I don't know what they were because it never came out in council that needed to be paid. And Martin Medeiros and the gang passed it saying, yes, we're going to pay his legal bills. What they were about, I don't know, and I couldn't find out. So. We're paying legal bills. We're paying the hush money for Gurpreet Dillon because the council voted. And, I know that there's a integrity commissioner complaint filed against Gurpreet Dillon because he should not have voted in that.
So the resolution for that is don't reelect Councillor Dillon, as Justin is basically pointing out here. Yeah. And if he does get reelected, as I said, we should put a special levy on people in wards 9 and 10 to have them pay all these costs. But also, I think the truth will eventually come out about this because we will have other councillors in there that won't do like Jeff Bowman, right, and support Councillor Dillon. Okay, right. Next up, strong mayor powers. Should Brampton have it or have not?
Well, put it this way. I mean, I've been an advocate for, the mayor having 2 votes. He's the mayor. For him to go through and have to mollycoddle and like we had it before with Linda Jeffrey, we had it before with Susan Fennell, where you have a cabal of councillors that are dead set. And it's like you have a vision. If you run as a mayor, you're running across the entire city, all wards with a vision of what you want to do with this city. If he gets in or she gets in as mayor, those councillors have got to be basically, the way I look at it, it's like, okay, this is the mayor's vision. I have my council concerns in whatever ward I'm in that I'm going to bring to them. But ultimately, it's the mayor's vision that got him into power. And that's the vision that those councillors should be there, trying to help the mayor establish his vision and do what he wants to do. But I'm a strong advocate of the mayor should have 2 votes. The councillors are representing the council. The mayor is representing the entire city. And for the mayor to have 1 vote to me is a ridiculous scenario because we end up as we have now, where we have a cabal that basically bands together. And the mayor is in a situation where he's got to try and, yes, you got to try and deal with these people. But at the end of the day, you're the mayor. You were elected to run this city, not some councillor in 3-4 or 9-10. You were put on the
position. I think
if a councillor wants to decide that he wants to have more power, then he can run or she can run for mayor. But at the end of the day,
I think a lot of people don't realize the limited abilities that mayors currently have in the province of Ontario. Right? I see all these news stories about Mayor Brown did this, Mayor Brown did that. Everything that Councillor Bowman is complaining about, he voted in favor for, right? He voted in favor for the CAO that now he says, I didn't know information. All you had to do was Google to find out information about the CEO you're hiring. He didn't even do that.
Yeah, well, if you're not smart enough to Google who the CAO is and the background of the previous CEO, then you know what? Maybe you're not smart enough to sit in that chair, right, for 8 years. I mean, we can go on. At the end of the day, it's like, we can talk about, what exactly has Jeff Bowman accomplished in 8 years, and we'll get into that later because
he's advocated for a barn. We know that.
Well, $1 million barn, yeah, he passed the cabal. He rushed that through, and without any
has he solved
kind of debate or consultant,
Has he solved the illegal basement units?
No, he was in charge of for 8 years. He was he was in charge along with Chief Bill Boyles to actually see about solving the illegal basement problems. That hasn't been fixed. We know that.
Yeah. Okay, last topic. We got a minute done. So secret papers.
Ooh. At the press conference today, what did he do? He held up a bunch of papers and said, I have these, what was it, 4 pages?
No, it was like, he said it was 400, but clearly it wasn't 400.
Oh, 400 pages basically of damning report on the BramptonU that basically Patrick Brown did not want to continue. It wasn't Patrick Brown, by the way. It was a council decision. The vote was 6-5 or 6-4.
No, 5-4 maybe. 5-3.
Gurpreet Dillon wasn't there, so it was 6-4. So it was passed by City Council. It wasn't Mayor's Brown, okay? And then the reporter asked him, well, if you have the paperwork, why can't we see them? And he said, well, only 4 people can see them. And basically those 4 people are the CEO and the 3 handpicked himself, Martin Medeiros and Pat Fortini, who actually picked the auditor, and then they met with the auditor and the CEO to go over all these receipts and everything else.
And somehow they have confidential information that nobody else has access to.
Right. And he was.
And this is the document that they want, the Councillor Fertini wants probably released, right? Information that he's seen, but not willing to reveal to anybody else. Not willing to go on record to say, I think
one of the reporters said to Bowman, well, why don't you just release it? Oh, well, if I release it, then the other three or the other will know it's me. Well, if you're going to Queenspark and you're going to throw a bunch of papers and say, these are the Pentagon papers of Brampton with so much damning evidence that, you know what, I'm here at Queenspark, then have the gumption, you know, or any kind of backbone to say, yes, I'm going to release them. Here's the damning evidence. Look for yourself and see what the problem is. Right?
I can put this in the lobby of City Hall for anybody who wants to put confidential information and give it to us.
Yeah. I'm interested to know about those receipts that Pat Fortini got in his mailbox, right? It's like, oh, well, I got these, right? Where are they? I hope they're in that big envelope.
Did the auditors look at his receipts?
I don't know. We don't know because basically they wanted $50,000 more to continue, and the interim draft is there that, you know, anybody can take a look at. So I don't know, right? It's, you know, it just gets worse and worse, and these councillors are doing this stuff on a regular basis, and it's like, guys, you know what? I can't wait till October 24th.
You know, and it is an election time. It's like, I don't know why they're still doing this nonsense. Go find your voters to vote for you. And let's talk about this after the election.
Well, Jeff Bowman is not running. He had his name in, and then he decided.
So I don't understand his motivation. It's clearly not for the betterment of the city because, you know, when they talked about the strong mayor powers, no, just Mayor Brown. Anybody else can have it, just not Mayor Brown.
Right, exactly. So how are you advocating on basically moving Brampton forward and representing Brampton in a positive light? As a councillor, you know, you have an obligation. You're representing the city on a regular basis. There's the councillors that we have. There's 6 of them or 5 now that basically they didn't represent Brampton in any way, shape, or form. One was a sexual assault. I mean, that as the late IC said, or the fired IC, if there was an opportunity or power within her power to get him off council, she would have done it. Right?
Did Councillor Bowman mention anything about that today at the press conference?
No, of course not. But at the same time, I mean, you know, like
the Councillor Bowman mentioned that, you know, one of the people looking to run against in his wards as regional councillor was assaulted a couple of days ago, and maybe give a couple of kind words to the person. No. Who was Jeff Bowman there for? He's there for himself and Elaine Moore and everybody who wants somebody else, and we know who that somebody else to become mayor is. An incompetent City of Brampton person.
Yeah, the City of Brampton employee, basically. Why? It's like, it's a ridiculous scenario. So, you know what? Going forward, the Toronto media doesn't know the background as well in Brampton. All they do is they take his word for it. They sit there and they say, yes, okay, something must be happening in Brampton.
Yeah, and we're not going to, you and I are not going to stand for this, right?
No,
whenever we see nonsense like this happening, you're going to see us on that evening.
We're not going to, well, obviously we're not like City TV or CBC. We don't have the reach and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we have a platform and we're going to use it, and nobody can stop the platform, because if you're out there making stupid claims or misrepresenting or putting bad light on Brampton because you think that you want to represent someone on the short term for whatever reason that you feel, then you know what, we're here to be able to do the opposite as well, right? So it's like, we can't stress this enough to people that are voting. We want to get more than 33% of the population out there voting, especially in this municipal election. I know it falls on Diwali, but if you celebrate Diwali, there's advanced polls. Get out there and vote and make sure that your voice is heard, because as Martin Madero said, oh, we can do anything we want, good or bad. We reign supreme at City Hall. That is not a councillor that we want basically representing the constituents of this city. If you feel that you reign supreme, you know, run for pontiff. I don't care. I mean, he reigns supreme. You know, go to a third world country as a dictator. But in a democracy, you represent your constituents, and you cannot do good or bad, whatever you want. You don't reign supreme.
On that, Don, we will. No, we won't see you next week.
You will see you and Karen next Tuesday.
All right. Thanks, Don. Have a good night.
All right. We'll see you.
you.